My wife laughed as she kicked me out of our mansion. Thanks for the $2 million inheritance, honey. Now go away. My new boyfriend needs the space, she said, brushing an invisible speck off her designer blouse like I was the dirt on her porch. I didn't shout. I didn't plead. I didn't even blink. I smiled. That tight, quiet smile she used to say gave me away during poker nights. She never learned that it was never the cards in my hands that mattered. It was the ones I never put on the table. She didn't know that before she emptied my account, I had already emptied my patience. Long ago, in fact. The moment she started calling me darling only in public. The moment she switched her perfume to the one I never liked, his choice, not mine. The moment she thought she was playing me. I walked away, suitcase in one hand, dignity in the other. She thought she'd won. She thought I'd disappear like some pitiful, heartbroken idiot who'd whimper into a bottle of whiskey and call it a life. The bottom line was, she didn't know what game she was in. Let me rewind. 3 years ago, her name was Emily Harper. Mine, Nathaniel Royce. We met at a charity gala she didn't belong at, and I didn't want to attend. I was the architect with a modest reputation. She was the art dealer's assistant with a laugh too loud and a dress too tight. I should have known from the way she eyed the donors more than the art. But I was a builder. That's what I do. I see crumbling things and try to make them stand tall again. We got married 6 months later. She moved into my estate, bought with blueprints and calloused hands. She called it our home. Started redecorating. Started networking. Started angling herself into rooms that used to make her uncomfortable. Somewhere in those wine-drenched parties and weekend brunches with men who couldn't stop staring at her chest, she figured out something about me. I was too quiet for her to see the storm coming. Fast forward to the funeral, my uncle's. The man who practically raised me. Left me everything. $2 million, a lakeside cabin, and all his stock in the Royce Development Group. I didn't cry. I'd done that already, in private. I just signed the papers. I was married, so legally, Emily had access to all shared assets. She moved fast. Within 6 weeks, my accounts were bled dry. She hired a lawyer. Friendly, apologetic. It's just business, Nate. And today? Today was the crescendo. The mansion she never paid for, never bled for, she claimed it. Thanks to a loophole I didn't see, she convinced the court it was a gift, a marital asset. My lawyer missed it. But that's fine. Because what she never knew was this. I stopped being the fool the moment she started treating me like one. 3 months ago, I set up a shell corporation. Then 2 more. Transferred every last share of Royce Development stock into a blind trust. Bought out the cabin in cash. Moved my liquid into crypto wallets she couldn't trace and offshore accounts under a dead man's name, my uncle's. She got $2 million on paper. What she didn't know was that the real money, the real leverage, never hit our joint accounts. And now? Now I had no wife, no mansion, and no obligations. I also had control of the company she thought I gave away, a surveillance file on her boyfriend, whose name wasn't even on the lease of his own apartment, and a timeline of every business contact she made while married to me. Because the woman forgot the first rule of betrayal. Don't stab the man who taught you how to hold the knife. You'd be surprised how fast a house turns cold once the wrong person claims it is theirs. And standing outside that mansion, my mansion, I could feel it, like the soul had been vacuumed out and replaced with overpriced furniture and cheap deception. I didn't look back, because I had somewhere to be. The cabin, the one my uncle left me, nestled by a quiet lake that didn't care how rich you were or who you were sleeping with. It was the kind of place where your breath fogged up the windows in the morning and the fireplace groaned like it remembered better times. My uncle called it the retreat. Fitting, now that I was retreating from a war she didn't even know she started. She thought she gutted me. She thought I'd be curled up somewhere in a 1-bedroom rental, licking my wounds and muttering about betrayal. What she didn't know, I'd already bought the property next door to hers. I wasn't retreating. I was repositioning. The thing about betrayal is, it's loud when it happens, but quiet when it settles. And in that quiet, I started building. Not houses this time. Something more permanent. I reached out to people she didn't know I still kept in touch with. Old friends from college. A software engineer I mentored who now ran a cybersecurity firm. Even her old boss at the gallery, turns out he didn't much care for Emily after she swindled him out of a commission. I played chess while she played dress-up. See, she used my name to get into circles. Dropped Nate Royce at luncheons, whispered about my development empire over champagne flutes. She thought she could build a brand on my legacy and then shove me out the back door. Big mistake. Because every event she showed up to with her new boyfriend, Brandon, by the way, 28, aspiring tech entrepreneur, bankrupt twice, wears cologne that smells like desperation. I had someone there. Quiet observers. They'd chat her up, offer to invest, dangle potential, and she'd bite. Every single time. Little did she know, all those offers, tied to me. All those NDAs she signed without reading, legally binding. My new boyfriend needs the space. Yeah, I hope Brandon likes sleeping in the giant bed she used to share with me. Because the mortgage she claimed she owned? Turns out, her name was never added to the deed. My lawyer, my real lawyer, not the one she thought I was using, found a clerical error in the county office. Funny how one misplaced signature means that transfer she waived in court doesn't actually hold up. I sent the paperwork in the mail 2 days after she kicked me out. The title is being reassigned. Back to me. She's going to scream when she finds out. Might even throw a vase. I almost pity Brandon, almost. But he chose the snake pit. Meanwhile, I had bigger things in motion. The Royce Development Group was pivoting. I rebranded the trust that owned the company under a new name, Ironvale. Clean, sharp. I wanted it to sound like a door slamming shut on anyone who thought they could rob me blind and walk away smiling. And Emily? She was walking around town thinking she bagged a trophy husband and walked off with his fortune. She didn't realize the fortune never sat in the account she drained. Because I never trusted banks with everything. When I was 22, working my way through architecture school, my uncle told me something I never forgot. A good man saves money. A smart man hides it. So I hid it. Not just the money. The power. The ownership. The leverage. Let her keep the art. The clothes. The kitchen knives she never used. Because the next chapter? That's where it all turns. I wasn't just going to reclaim what was mine. I was going to make her depend on me for the life she thought she stole. I already had the first domino ready to fall. Her boyfriend's startup? Funded by one of my shell companies. He didn't know it. She certainly didn't. But the next time Brandon tried to run his mouth at some conference and pitch my tech, the cease and desist would hit harder than her stilettos on marble. Let her laugh. Let her celebrate. I smiled too. But mine meant something. There's a moment in every con where the mark thinks they've won. They sip the wine, flash the ring, and parade around in clothes they couldn't afford without the man they just left behind. They don't see the trap because they're too busy basking in the glow of their imagined triumph. Emily was glowing. Instagram posts in front of my fireplace. Captions like new beginnings, same taste for luxury. She wore my downfall like a fashion accessory. Smug smiles. Sunlight through designer sunglasses. Brandon in the background, trying too hard to look like he belonged. I zoomed in once on one of those posts he had on one of my watches. So that's where it went. Brandon wore my Rolex like it was a badge of success. That watch meant something. My first bonus after landing the city restoration contract. 15 months of blueprints and sleepless nights. He wore it like it came free with a double espresso and a crypto crash. But that's fine. Because everything they flaunted, I let them have it. I needed her to feel safe. Secure. Like the storm had passed and she'd outlived it. She had no idea I was the storm. Brandon's company was called Gravitas. Bold name for a guy who couldn't spell fiduciary. On paper, it was a next-gen decentralized payment solution built to rival banking APIs. In reality, a half-baked tech stack and a borrowed buzzword salad. I made sure of it. Because the angel investor who gave him his seed funding? That was me. Not directly, of course. The wire came through a VC firm I quietly funded 2 years ago, Graythorn Holdings, with me listed as strategic advisory. The condition of the investment? That the app's intellectual property rights defaulted to the investor in the event of failed milestones or suspicious activity. They signed it. They didn't read it. All it took was one QA audit and a single fabricated security flaw. Don't worry, I made sure the flaw was discovered by a third-party compliance firm I also paid under the table. 3 days later, Gravitas was flagged for breach of user data integrity. App removed from the store. Accounts frozen pending investigation. Brandon? Panicking. Emily? Trying to play the supportive girlfriend. But the sparkle in her eyes dimmed when the restaurant declined her platinum card. She called me the next night. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was sugar-coated panic. Nate, I know things ended badly, but can we talk? It's important. I think someone's sabotaging Brandon's company. Someone is, sweetheart. His name's Nathaniel Royce. You might remember him. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because part of revenge is timing. You don't pull the trigger until you see the whites of their pride. Instead, I sent a short email. Anonymous. A single line. You took the wrong man for granted. She'd know it was me. She always hated riddles. Said they made her feel stupid. Then I made another move. The mansion. Remember that clerical error I mentioned? That single missing signature that invalidated the transfer? It was finalized. Deed's back in my name. I gave it a week, just enough time for her to realize the utilities weren't paid, the gate access code reset, and the locks changed. The day she came home to find her passcode no longer worked, I had a camera recording the whole meltdown from across the street. She banged on the door, screaming, while Brandon stood there like a man who just realized the gold mine was fool's gold. Back at the cabin, I poured myself a drink. No music. Just the sound of firewood cracking and the phone buzzing with fury I wouldn't answer. She didn't know where to go. Brandon had no money, no company, and now no girlfriend to sleep his way to the top with. I built her whole new life, then watched her fumble it like a glass sculpture thrown from a balcony. And yet, I wasn't done. Not until she understood that her biggest mistake wasn't betraying me. It was thinking I'd do nothing about it. The next phase would be surgical. Precise. She was about to learn that revenge doesn't come in flames. It comes in paperwork, silence, and the sound of everything she clung to slipping through her polished fingers. People like Emily are used to doors opening. Open doors to parties. Open arms from strangers who want to bask in her shine. Open wallets from men who think beauty is a currency worth investing in. But when you've kicked out the one man who actually built those doors, eventually, they all close. 2 days after I reclaimed the mansion, she filed an emergency injunction to freeze the property reassignment. Her lawyer, some puffed-up Beverly Hills divorce specialist with a silver tongue and a spray tan, stormed into court with a stack of poorly prepared arguments about community property and intent to gift. I wasn't there in person. Didn't need to be. My lawyer was. My real one. The one who knew the exact dates, the bank statements, the tax filings, and most importantly, the trust structure that owned the land the mansion sat on. It was never mine. It was never ours. It was held by the Royce Foundation, chartered in Delaware. And it had one beneficiary, me. You can't take what was never technically yours. Judge denied her motion in less than 20 minutes. Emily cried in the hallway afterward. Not the mascara perfect, dramatic sobs she used to throw when I'd forget an anniversary, but the ugly kind. The kind where your whole body hunches in on itself because you realize you're not the star of the show anymore. Brandon tried to comfort her. But you can't wipe away a breakdown when you're too busy trying to keep your own company from being swallowed whole. They moved into a short-term rental across town. 2-bedroom, no fireplace, no tennis court. A neighborhood where the landscaping was done by the tenants themselves. Emily posted a black and white selfie the next morning with the caption, "Starting over. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." Comments were off. Of course they were. I waited exactly 1 week before Phase 4. See, Emily had a side hustle. Interior styling for upscale listings. And her newest contract? A boutique development firm in downtown LA. They were launching a luxury condo line, modern, sleek, overpriced. She pitched herself as the branding genius behind it. Married to a developer, she'd said in the meeting. I know the market inside and out. What she didn't know was that the firm was funded by Triton Urban Ventures, a shell company, owned by Graythorn Holdings, owned by me. She signed the contract 6 weeks ago. And on the final page of that contract was a clause she never read. Any behavior deemed damaging to the firm's brand or professional reputation results in immediate termination and forfeiture of outstanding payments. So I leaked the Brandon scandal. A single message to an industry blog. Anonymous. Titled, Fake Tech CEO Linked to Embezzlement Investigation. No mention of Emily. But her name was attached to Brandon's in every press release, every interview, every social post. Guilt by association. The kind that doesn't look good when you're selling 7-figure condos to retirees and foreign investors. She got an email the next day. Contract terminated. All future commissions revoked. She tried to call me again. I let it ring. That night, she sent a text. Why are you doing this? Finally. The question. As if betrayal were a game of Monopoly, and she just landed on Boardwalk after skipping through the rest of the board like a queen. I didn't reply, because she still didn't get it. This wasn't about money, or mansions, or brand deals. It was about consequences. She took me for a man who'd walk away with his head down. But I wasn't walking away. I was watching, waiting, rebuilding. And now I had her backed into a corner she carved for herself, with me holding the blueprint. There's an art to revenge. Anyone can swing a hammer. But if you want it to last, you learn to pull threads. And Emily? She left a lot of threads dangling. See, when people climb fast, they forget who helped them up the ladder. More importantly, they forget who they stepped on to get there. And now, those people were hearing whispers, rumors. A name, Emily Royce. A name attached to broken contracts, canceled projects, and a boyfriend-turned-fraud case, so public even Reddit threads had started naming her in the comments. The first call came from Cameron Blythe, a former business partner of Emily's back in her styling for wealthy divorcees days. She'd burned him years ago on a Malibu beach house shoot, promised exclusive rights, then flipped the designs to a higher bidder in New York. Cameron sued. Emily settled quietly. That little clause in the NDA said she couldn't consult or work for any luxury design brand for 3 years. But when she joined the boutique condo project downtown, yeah, that counted. Cameron's lawyer contacted Triton Urban Ventures, my shell company. Guess who handed over the paperwork confirming her employment? Yours truly. That lawsuit got filed so fast, her inbox should have been smoking. Then came Margot Lynn, a wedding planner whose name Emily dragged through the mud to save face with a high society bride 2 summers ago. Emily had mismanaged a venue redesign, wrong shade of ivory. Can you imagine the scandal? And blame Margot in front of a dozen guests. Margot's business took a nosedive. She never forgot it. And when I offered her a platform to tell her story, anonymously, at first, she jumped. The blog post went viral. When pretty faces ruin reputations, a cautionary tale. No names, but everyone in the scene knew. The thinly veiled references. The timeline. The style. The city. It didn't have to name her. It just had to remind people who she really was. Emily tried to pivot. I saw the rebrand attempt coming a mile away. She deleted her old Instagram. Launched a new one, Emily Lang. Dropped the Royce. Posted photos in soft lighting, book in lap aesthetics, trying to channel humble like it wasn't the same woman who once said, "I'd rather die than shop clearance." The caption? Sometimes life strips you down so it can rebuild you. Cute. Too bad her followers included 3 different women who knew about Brandon's other girlfriend. One of them DM'd me screenshots. Turns out he'd been stringing all of them along for years. Emily was just his biggest paycheck. I didn't even need to lift a finger. They formed a group chat. Called it #BrandedByBrandon. The receipts? Oh, they came fast. One of the girls even made a TikTok, overlaid with a photo of Brandon and Emily at a gallery event. POV, you find out your ex-girlfriend's boyfriend is cheating on her with you and 2 others. The comments tore her apart. She deserves it. Gold digger gets got. Play stupid games. Emily disabled comments within the hour. She went quiet after that. Stopped posting. Stopped calling. For 2 whole weeks, not a word. I'd like to say I felt something. Regret, maybe. Sadness. Nostalgia. But all I felt was confirmation. Because people like Emily only learn when they lose something they can't buy back. Reputation. Influence. Access. She didn't just lose money. She lost the illusion. And with it, the ability to pretend she was anything more than a social climber who married an architect and thought she could redraw the blueprint of his life. But this wasn't over. Because there was still one piece left. Something I'd been saving. A little file. Labeled, Prenuptial Amendment, Clause 17B. The clause she initialed in a rush, back when we were engaged, and she didn't know that the man sitting across from her at the lawyer's desk had already started building the exit ramp. The clause said that in the event of infidelity proven by digital evidence, all asset claims default to the signatory with proof. Guess who had photos, texts, videos, even an Uber receipt? Yeah, and guess where that clause gets enforced? In the very court she thought she conquered. You ever see the look on someone's face when they realize they're not the predator anymore? That was Emily's face in the courtroom. Gone was the woman who strutted out of our mansion in heels that clicked like war drums. Gone was the smirk she wore when she threw my suitcase down the marble steps and told me to make room for better company. No? She looked small. Sharp suit, yes. But the posture? Slumped. Eyes flickering. Lip twitching. Because she knew. The air had shifted. The man who walked into that courtroom wasn't the husband she once rolled over. I wasn't there to make peace. I was there to reclaim what was mine with interest. My lawyer started calmly. No theatrics. Just evidence. Cold. Clean. Undeniable. We opened with the clause 17B of our amended prenup. Her initials, dated, timestamped. Then we showed the chain of documentation. Your Honor, we have a verified digital trail of infidelity beginning 4 months prior to Mr. Royce's ejection from the shared residence. Emails, texts, GPS check-ins, photos, even the voice memo Brandon Sinner panting like an idiot, where he said, "I can't believe he still doesn't know." He did. I did. The whole time. Her lawyer objected, irrelevant, invasive character assassination. The judge didn't flinch. He glanced at the clause, then at Emily, then back at me. Mr. Royce, you're requesting full forfeiture of all marital asset claims per 17B? That's correct. And the documentation has been verified? My lawyer nodded. Digitally and legally notarized, Your Honor. The judge sighed. And then the gavel dropped. Motion granted. Clause 17B is enforceable. All claims to marital assets by Mrs. Royce are nullified under breach of contract. You could have heard her soul crack from across the room. She didn't say a word. Not then. But I saw her jaw lock.